Genius Games episode 3, and I am not happy because this was originally supposed to be on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and because it had low views, it's now only on a Wednesday. Now, if this was the case, they should have just put the whole thing on in the app to watch. Personally, I really like this show. I wouldn't class it as reality, it is more of a game show, but I don't think it's difficult to understand whatsoever. So up until this episode, I've thought, do you know what? I would like to go on this. I'm feeling it. I think that I could do well. Until they introduce a word game. I'm dyslexic. I'd be fucked. That being said, I would make good alliances and good friends, so I think I would still have stood a chance. So basically, in this episode, all the contestants had to try and figure out a word, and if they solved that word, then they weren't going into the final battle, and they won the garnets, which is the show's money. But there was one secret agent or whatever it was they called it, and they got told the word, and their job was to try and convince everybody else to not solve the word. If they didn't succeed in convincing other people not to solve the word, then they would go into the final battle. However, if they did succeed, then the person with the lowest points would go into the final battle. So that was all fine and well. I was understanding what was going on. However, do not fucking ask me to make a word, because I can't spell. I would have no clue whatsoever. So each contestant went into the room and they were given a clue about what the word could be. So the clues were like, the first half of the word has got a letter from the first half of the alphabet, and the second half of the word has got a letter from the second half of the alphabet, or it's got two letters the same, or whatever. And as a dyslexic person, I would have read that clue and went, okay, you'd been as well giving me nothing. Bernard, who's my favourite contestant, ended up getting chose as the secret agent. So he was given the word, and then he had to go and convince everybody not to solve the word. But for me, it just went in too hard. It was too much. He walked out of the room, and instantly everybody knew that he was a secret agent. He wasn't even trying to hide it, right? But what I don't like about this show is there's certain rooms, and they only get a certain amount of time to speak. I think it's 15 minutes. So you're rushing round, and it was just too much. He pointed out 4 people. It's like, you, come here. Don't tell anybody your clues. Everybody don't tell anybody your clues. And I kind of didn't understand why they were just doing what he said. It made no sense to me. I know that the point was that if he won, then basically he would kind of get to decide who went into the final battle, right? But everybody was just too willing to go along with his plan. So he was taking in small groups of people and he was saying, I'm the secret agent, please don't solve the word, I'll tell you certain letters to yours, right? And the thing that was kind of getting me about him in this episode is that he was saying to people, oh, I'll tell you this, I'll tell you that, and he's forgetting that everybody else in the game is also supposedly a genius. So plenty of them would have guessed the word on their own. It was a bit patronising. I'm actually pathetic with names, but I think this girl's name is India, and she was in the first alliance that he pulled in, and he's like, don't solve the word, I'll make sure you're not in the final battle, blah blah blah. And she was the only one who was really like, why are we doing what he's saying? Why are we trusting him? Why can't we just play our own game? And this woman here, who I believe was his original target, he wanted her to get the least points so that she would be in the final battle. And her as well, she was like, I don't understand what's going on. He hasn't gave me any letters. He's obviously wanting me out of the game. And it was just being way too obvious. So if Bernard ended up winning the game, then he got to give somebody an immunity chip. So this guy was like, right, if I work with you and I help you, you give me the immunity chip, right? So he made a deal with him. And then this girl, I'm really sorry, I have not saved any of the names right. I think her name's Charlotte, but I'm not sure. She then went to him and says, I've been working with you, will you give me the immunity chip? And Bernard says, I've already promised it to somebody else, right? And again, I think that this girl forgets that other people in the room are also geniuses, and she acts as if they're all stupid. She also gets really emotional and cries all the time. And even though I like her as a person, she's quite annoying. So in the end, this guy was in the room and he's like, I could solve this word. I could go behind his back. I could fucking wreck his whole game, right? But I was surprised he didn't, because last week he was nearly getting took into the final battle. And that Bernard guy, he offered somebody his garnet not to take this other woman, right? So I thought, right, he's going to be in an alliance with him now, all of a sudden. I thought he was going to stab him in the back, but he didn't. So Bernard ended up winning and he got to choose who went into the final battle. And I was shocked. Because I thought he was going to pick the woman with the blonde hair, but he didn't. He picked this guy. And this guy is a professional poker player, right? And I really thought that he was going to be working with him. But he says, I'm choosing you because you're a big threat and it would like make sense for me to get rid of you, basically, right? Because there's only going to be one winner in the end. So it was a bit shocking. So then he had to choose somebody to take into the final battle with him, and then whoever he beats, then they're out the game. So he chose this woman. She's a doctor and she's been in the final battle before, and she won the last time. And the game that she played was a good one. It was like spot the difference or similarities, and she done so well. So in this one, it was like poker face, it was called. So they had to pick up cards and hold them on their head, and then the other person had to bet based on what they see on the other person's head. So she started off, she's winning, right? And she's like, oh, I'm doing great. And everybody's like, oh my God, she's doing really good. But she suspected that that guy was counting cards, right? I think his name's Ken. I'm not sure. But she thought he might be counting cards. So she was chatting away to him and she's like, oh, sometimes I put on an Indian accent or blah, 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 right? Try to put him off. And he was getting a bit distracted. But then she was like clearly winning. But he was just reading her, right? And she's like, oh, do you gamble? Do you play games? And he's like, yeah, I play a lot of games. Not telling her I'm a professional poker player, right? Obviously can count cards and stuff like that. So as it's coming up for like the end rounds, he's saying to the camera, I know that when I've got like a high card, she's betting low. And he could read it like a fucking book, right? So in the end, he fucking wiped the floor with her. It was actually horrific because she was in there and she's thinking, oh my God, I'm doing great. And no, he's like, alright, I know what I'm doing now. I can literally read you like a book. So now she's away home. So like I said, I really enjoy this show. It isn't really reality, it is more a game show. But it was supposed to be on a Wednesday, Thursday, and I've nothing else to watch because Honesty Box is only on next week and then it's finished. But I've seen 2 new shows that's coming on. One called Open House, which is like couples that are going and experimenting. I don't know if I'm going to like it or not. And there's also one called Virgin Island, where they take all these virgins and put them on an island and kind of try and pair them up. And you know how that way where I think it looks interesting, but when I see the clips of it, it's making me cringe a wee bit, but I'll give it a go and see what happens. But there's this show on Netflix about cheating that my pal told me to watch, so I'm going to go and watch that now and see if I fancy making videos about that. But if there's anything else that I should watch to make videos about, let me know in the comments. Bye!